Shalom. Today we're going to continue with the Gospel according to Matthew. We are studying the Hebraic background, and in this lesson we will cover Joseph's dreams, Yeshua's birth, and the magi. Starting in Matthew 1:18. Now the birth of Yeshua the Messiah was on this wise. When as his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Spirit. To better understand the situation, we'll have a brief review of the Hebrew wedding customs. So generally, we are talking about an arranged marriage. These marriages really were not forced, and the parents are observant enough of their children to see who's sweet on who and can they make a match for them. And the women were not required to accept the arrangement made by their parents. The second stage is either called irisin, which is an Aramaic word, or kiddushin, which means sanctification, and this is the betrothal stage. So the decision is made that the couple would marry. There is a document called a ketubah, a marriage contract, and both the parties and the parents read it and sign it. They have a cup of wine to seal the agreement. At that point, the groom leaves to build the house for the new couple. He returns for his bride at an unknown hour when his father approves the house and say, okay, time to complete the marriage contract. That is when the groom will return. But there's no set date for that. The next stage is called nisuin, which is the actual wedding, what we would consider to be a formal wedding. And this word comes from the word to lift up. In other words, the man is now going to support the woman. And we still have a custom in many countries of the groom carrying the bride over the threshold. He's actually going to physically carry her, lift her up. And then they dwell together. So at this point in Matthew's story, we see that they are finished with the ketubah and the wine, and presumably Joseph has gone off to build the house. And so Joseph was going to legally divorce her. Why? It has to be a legal divorce because it's a legal contract. The betrothal is a legal contract. But while he was thinking about these things, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a dream, saying, Joseph, you son of David, fear not to take Mary for your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. And she shall bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Yeshua, for he shall save his people from their sins. So in the last episode we talked about how his father was named Jacob, and then his name is Joseph. And then back in the forefathers, there's a Jacob and Joseph who are both dreamers. And so this Joseph is also hears from the Lord through dreams. Now Yeshua means salvation, to deliver, and that is how you know that the language was Hebrew. Because every name in the Bible is important, and they all have Hebrew meanings, and they're related to what's going to happen to that person or what that person accomplishes. Yeshua, as a name, is related to Yehoshua, Joshua, the son of Nun. And what's interesting here is that Nun, this is the picture of the Paleo letter, the ancient letter Nun. It's like a little seed or a tadpole kind of fish, and it gives us the idea of going on from generation to generation to generation. So Joshua, son of Nun, could also be salvation, son of eternity. Joshua is also a shadow picture of Yeshua, and you can compare many things about their history. They both brought the people into the land. There are battles, there's bombardment of stones and hiding in caves, which we read about in the future in Revelation. There are trumpet judgments. There's a moment of silence and then a shout. Joshua had 2 spies, and there will be 2 witnesses. The people of God will be rescued, and there will be 7 nations defeated. So it's a shadow picture of the coming return of Yeshua. Another interesting thing about this root, Yesha is a term that's used in modern Israel to refer to a certain portion of the land. The Yud stands for Yehuda, which we would call Judea. The Shin stands for Shamron, which we would call Samaria, and those two together are what people call the so-called West Bank. And then, of course, the Ayin stands for Alza, which is Gaza, and you know where that is. So it's an interesting grouping of territory that people are laying claim to. In the meantime, it's being called as an acronym, Yeshua, salvation. Now all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. And this comes from the prophecy in Isaiah 7:14. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Now they didn't call his name Emmanuel. Joseph has a previous command to name the baby Yeshua. Many times in terms of a person's name, we're talking about other facets of their nature or their future accomplishment. And in fact, Yeshua is God with us. Now there is some contention about this word virgin here. There is a very strict word for virgin, which is betulah, which you see is Strong's 1330. And there's another word, and the second word is the word which is used in the Isaiah prophecy, alma, which is Strong's 5959. However, we see that both of these words are used to refer to the same person. In Genesis 24, in verse 16, Rebekah is coming to the well to meet Eliezer, Abraham's servant. And the damsel was very fair to look upon, a virgin, and here it uses betulah, the first word. Neither had any man known her. It's very well defined. And she went down to the well and filled her pitcher and came up. However, a few verses later, Eliezer refers to her in verse 43. Behold, I stand by the well of water, and it shall come to pass that when the virgin, and here he uses the word alma, comes forth to draw water, and I say to her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water of thy pitcher to drink. So the alma is not so well defined strictly as being a virgin, but it is referred to a young woman who at that age should be a virgin. At any rate, both of those words are translated into Greek as parthenos, which means virgin. If you're familiar in the English with parthenogenic reproduction, this is asexual reproduction, which occurs in some fish, worms, for example, and also even Komodo dragons. Continuing in Matthew 2, Now when Yeshua was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. So the wise men in Greek, the singular is magos, and the plural is magi, but we say magi. And these people are practitioners of magic, with the meaning expanded to include astronomy, astrology, alchemy, and other forms of esoteric knowledge. Persians are known in particular for being masters of astrology. And sure enough, we find out in Daniel 5:11 that there is a man, Daniel, in your kingdom, who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. So it may very well be that Daniel had understanding of the scriptures, which he brought with him to the exile, and being the chief of these magi, trained them to look specifically for the time when the star would appear. And it appears that they traveled several months to get there. They were not at the birth. We see they come to the house where Joseph and Mary and the baby are staying. It's a later time. There have been a lot of theories about exactly what they did see in the sky. There is a period where the moon appears to be in the womb of the constellation Virgo. That is one possibility. In 6 BC, in April 17th, which is a likely date for the birth of Yeshua, there was an alignment of Jupiter, Saturn, and the moon, and the sun in the constellation of Aries. Aries is the sign of the ram, the sacrifice lamb. Or possibly there was a supernova in Andromeda. Now it says when they showed up that Herod was troubled. And the reason he was troubled is because he knew he was not the legitimate king of Israel. The legitimate king of Israel must be from the tribe of Judah. Herod was an Idumean. That means he came from Edom. In the time of the Maccabees, John Hyrcanus forced the Idumeans in the south and the Galileans in the north to convert to Judaism. So Herod was basically brought up loosely as a Jewish convert. He married the daughter of Hyrcanus II, Mariamne, who was also a niece of Antigonus, and he did this in an attempt to secure his claim to the throne and gain some Jewish favor. So when the Magi show up and they say, "Where's the king of Israel?" his position is seriously threatened. He calls the wise men and says, "Okay, where is this king to be born?" And the wise men cite a prophecy from Micah 5:2. "And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of you shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel." And Micah includes that the goings forth have been from old, from everlasting. How did the prophets know that the ruler would come from Bethlehem? One thing that is interesting is that Bethlehem in Hebrew means literally house of bread. And we know that Yeshua said he is the bread of life from John 6:51. "I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. He is the bread of the world. He is born in the house of bread." The prophets knew that the ruler would be the son of David, and we can trace this in the genealogy in Ruth 1:1. "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And we know eventually his wife comes back with Ruth, and she's going to marry Boaz, and Boaz is a near kinsman redeemer, so he is also in Bethlehem. Later we see David in 1 Samuel 20, verse 6. "If your father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me, that he might run to Bethlehem his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family." So the prophets fully expect that the coming ruler would come from Bethlehem. Now this is just a little note to show you why it's important to go to the Hebraic background, the Hebrew background of these names. So when we get to the Greek Septuagint, it's written Bethlehem. That's pretty close. By the time you get to Latin, it's Betlehem. And in Spanish, it's just smashed together, Belen. There is no way you're ever going to look at Belen and see Bethlehem. And in Russian, there's no th sound. They put a f sound. So it's Biflem. So it's important to go to your concordance and find out what do these things mean actually in Hebrew. That's where the real answer is. So the wise men go off, and when they are come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So they're not at the inn or the stable where Yeshua was born. It's been a couple of years, and they are living in a house. What are the gifts? Gold is for the king. Frankincense is for the priest. And myrrh is for burial, for the human being. The human being will die. And here we see another dream of Joseph. "And when they were departed," that is the wise men, "behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I have called my son." And this verse comes from Hosea 11:1. There is a principle of interpretation which is called pardes, and there's another video on this site. I'll give you the link so that you can understand it totally. But the 4 letters stand for 4 different levels of interpretation. The P, the Peshat, we might call the plain meaning. And this is Hosea's meaning. Hosea is not dreaming up something in the future when there'll be a Messiah and his father will take him off to Egypt. He's talking about the Egyptian exile of the Hebrew people. But when Matthew picks it up, he picks it up as a remez, as a reference, as an inference to something that will happen or did happen, that is happening to Yeshua in his time. The D is the drash. It's the level we dig out. It's a devotional level. How does this apply to me? How does it apply to me that I need to get out of Egypt? And the S is a sod. It's a secret level and has something to do with the future. There is a future Exodus. So if you look at that other video about the Pardes, you can see that broken out a little more cleanly. So Herod realizes that he was tricked, and when he saw he was mocked of the wise men, he was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Some people say that this is deliberately spliced into the narrative so that it resembles what happened to Moses. And then Matthew says that this was to fulfill another prophecy from Jeremiah 31:15. Thus says Jehovah, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. If you actually go to Jeremiah 31, it is a very positive prophetic chapter about the restoration of Israel and the Hebrew people and Ephraim and Judah, about the remnant being saved. And it talks about Ephraim, my firstborn. Who were Rachel's children, literally, Joseph and Benjamin, and who is Benjamin's heir, Ephraim. And out of the whole chapter of the prosperity, of the coming prosperity and return of the people, there is this one verse 15 about the lament. And so within the context of this chapter, it's talking about some previous event, the exile, how bad things were. But Jeremiah is also at the same time, he's promising a good future. So when Matthew picks this up, again, it's not, the scripture was not written for Matthew's time, for something literal. It's written as a hint for what is coming forth as a result of Yeshua's having been born. And we see Joseph's third dream. But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. Nowhere is it spoken by the prophets that Yeshua, or the Messiah, that the coming Messiah will live in Nazareth, or even that he would be a Nazarite. There is a whole nother video explaining how this comes about. It appears to come from one verse, Isaiah 11:1, talking about the coming Messiah, a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch. The Messiah is the branch, and this word is netzer, and it is the same as the name of the town of Nazareth, and that is probably the origin of this idea that there is a prophecy that the Messiah would be called a Nazarene, that he would be from Nazareth. I pray this is helpful to your studies. Until next time, tasim et ha'inayim al hashamayim, keep your eye on the sky, your redemption draweth nigh. Shalom.